I'll take just a minute for everyone to join.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary's Stay at Home speaker series. Today's program is Caracaras Are Cool with special guest David Barber, which is Hawk Mountain Senior Research Biologist. Hi, David.
Hi, everybody.
My name is Riley Davenport. I'm an educator at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, and we are so glad you guys are joining us today. Feel free to let us know if the audio is too loud, too quiet, or if anything like that. Thank you guys all for joining us. So Hawk Mountain Sanctuary is the world's first refuge for birds of prey. We continue to work to be leaders in raptor conservation, science, and education locally and globally around the world. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary is a private nonprofit, and membership is the lifeblood of our organization. To all of our members, thank you guys so much for your continued support. If you're joining us today and you're not a member, we hope that you consider joining us sometime in the future. Hawk Mountain hopes that everyone remains healthy and safe during this time of COVID crisis. We are excited to offer our community a variety of free virtual programming. As always, Hawk Mountain always welcomes and greatly appreciates donations. Just so everyone is aware, today's program is being recorded. The video will be accessible later on Hawk Mountain's YouTube channel as a continued resource. We also have directions on our website to access those videos on YouTube. At any time during today's program, viewers may submit questions through the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform. We've designated time after the presentation to answer some questions from the audience if you have any. And we're so excited that David Barber is joining us today to give us a sneak peek into the fascinating caracara research in the Falkland Islands. First, we are going to start with the basics and meet the striated caracara, also known as Johnny Rooks in the Falklands. So I'm gonna get started here and set up, share my screen. And I am going to mute myself, or not mute myself, I'm going to stop my video just so we have a little bit more bandwidth here. And David, you're welcome to mute or leave your audio on if you want to chime in, or turn your camera off, completely up to you. All right, so we'll get started here. So this presentation was actually created by 2019 education trainee Diana Myers in collaboration with Katie Harrington, which is a Hawk Mountain Research Associate. This presentation was developed as part of a curriculum for school students that live in the Falkland Islands and share habitat and space with these birds. So supplemental worksheets have been emailed to everyone who is registered for anyone who wants to take a deeper dive into the world of striated caracaras, aka Johnny Rooks. After this presentation, we're going to talk more with David about his adventures and his research studying caracaras in the Falklands. So let's get started. All right. So who is Hawk Mountain? This presentation was created by educators at Hawk Mountain, and we're located all the way in Pennsylvania, which is quite the hike from the Falkland Islands. Hawk Mountain became the first ever hawk sanctuary in the world, and it's Hawk Mountain's mission to educate people about birds of prey and support raptor conservation all over the globe. So what is a Johnny Rook? There are over 100 raptor species or birds of prey around the world, but today we're going to focus on learning about this one specific raptor, the striated caracara, also known as the Johnny Rook. Johnny Rooks are part of the falcon family. They are a curious and intriguing bird with many unique adaptations that make them very special. So we're going to learn a little bit more about who these birds are. So what do they look like? Here in the Falklands, it may be easy to know it as a Johnny Rook because they're the only, they're one of few birds of prey there. They have striated caracaras, crested caracaras, red-backed hawks, peregrine falcons, and turkey vultures that live there. So it's like a smaller variety, so it's easier to tell them apart. Though in general, scientists try to identify birds in the wild using special traits called field marks. So field marks are unique features that birds have, such as their coloring or physical features that make it easy to tell them apart and show how they stand out from other birds. So we may know what Johnny Rooks look like, but we're going to talk about those specific field marks so you can find out what age they are and things like that. Oh, wait. So the juvenile Johnny Rooks, which you can see on the left side here, they have dark brown feathers, black bills, and gray legs. And they mature later on at about 5 years old. They gain their adult plumage or feathers. Their color tends to be more dramatic. So they gain those silvery streaks that you can see on their head and neck feathers. And these are called striations, which is what the name striated caracara comes from. Their faces and legs also turn like a yellow-orange color. So adult Johnny Rooks are relatively easy to identify because they're the only large bird of prey in the Falklands with that dark body, silver beak, and the white tail band. So where in the world are they? So they're mainly in the Falklands. While there are some captive populations in the UK, wild Johnny Rooks are only native to the Falkland Islands and some areas of the southern part of South America. Johnny Rooks tend to live in remote outer islands where it's difficult for scientists to travel. So as a result, scientists have had a hard time accessing and learning about these interesting birds. So where in the Falklands are they specifically? So out of all the places in the world where we can find Johnny Rooks, the Falklands are very special because they have the largest population. Johnny Rooks' range, or the geographic area that they live in, used to cover more of the Falklands, but has decreased and is now mostly just the outer islands. The islands with the darker yellow, the Steeple Jason, Grand Jason, New Island area, they have the largest breeding populations in the Falklands and possibly the world. All right, how many are there in the world? There are less than 2,000 mature adults in the Johnny Rook global population. 2,000 might seem like a lot, but it is actually similar to the amount of giant pandas that there are in the world, and they are considered critically endangered, just to paint a picture of how many numbers we have. Let's see, are they smart? So Johnny Rooks are known for some really unique behaviors, which we'll show some examples of. We're going to check out 3 different videos of Johnny Rooks and try to figure out if these birds are smart, if we think they're smart. Here you can see a striated caracara sitting in a bucket. So here are some video clips.
I was spending Nemo, but Nemo, stop laughing at me! Go back and take it. There are different cars. Stop taking them all the time. It's there. Come here, that's good. All different colours, all different shapes, different sizes, different materials, and different names. Can you possibly understand what I mean about a name? I couldn't concentrate because this is hard. Look at me, concentrate. Concentrate. Nemo. Donald Duck. And Piglet. Got it? Piglet, Donald Duck, and Nemo. Okay, I'm going to mix them up. No. Wait. Get down there. Mix them up. And I want you to go find Nemo. Weeks ago, this is literally just a couple of weeks ago, I thought, that's incredible that she actually does that. She gets 1 out of 3. Is it luck though? And a couple of weeks ago, I thought, I wonder just how clever this bird is. Because I said to her, go and find Donald Duck then. Let's see how clever you are. And she went out and she got Donald Duck. Now that's 2 out of 3. 1 out of 3 you could say is luck, but she gets 2 out of 3. This is why I think this bird is the most intelligent bird in the world. The trouble is now that you see there's nothing on her legs. I can't catch hold of her. And I've got to get her back to her ages. So what am I going to do? I've got to let her sit on my shoulder. I've got to grab a great big hand of food. And as long as I walk and talk and feed, she won't bite me. I've got to walk a bit faster because I'm running out of food. But she knows if she's a good girl and jumps in, she's going to get double rations. In she goes, look. She dives in, she waits for the food, give her that place, and I'm going to close this, lock it properly, because she taps it with a beak to try to undo it. In a second or two, she'll jump up here on the shelf there, look. The trouble with intelligent birds like her is they don't forget. And if I don't give her that ticket there, when I go to clean out her aviary tomorrow morning, she'll chase me around going to my ankles. I'll tell you what, that bloody hurts. So anyway, next time someone calls you.
All right, so hopefully you guys were able to hear that audio. In that video, the Caracaras' name was Tina, an adult female, and she was able to identify stuffed animals by their name. She can also identify the colors and the shapes and associate it with the name of those toys, which was very impressive. I don't know if my pets would even be able to do that, so very cool stuff. Let's see for our next example here what we have.
Now these guys come from the Falkland Islands, and the Falkland Islands are quite flat. There's not really that much in terms of perching, not many trees and stuff there. So these guys have evolved to run around on the floor. So she's not going to fly backwards and forwards like the first two did. Hopefully she'll do all of her behaviour right in front of me on stage here. Now naturally in the wild we spend a lot of time combing beaches, taking out the rocks and seaweed to find things that are neat. So to replicate that today, we have a couple of bits of driftwood. We're going to get her moving these bits of driftwood out of the way in order to get some food that I've popped underneath. There we go. Now, I'd like Nacho to use her feet to move these bits of wood, but she has realised it's just as easy to shove her head underneath instead. So that's probably what she's going to do. So again, Nacho, our striated caracara cheating as I was expecting them to do. These guys will eat raw copper penguin chicks, and they will bully adult hot copper penguins into vomiting out their dinner and then eat that as well. So we've got some raw copper penguins for Nacho to bully today. These are our 3 willing volunteers. We're going to put them down. We're going to put some food underneath them. So all Nacho has to do is bully these penguins to death by knocking them over in order to get the food. Now, it takes me long to set it up with this. There we go, there's one. We'll have one over here. There we go, and then one more right in the middle. Penguin, there we go. Alright. Okay, so we'll see how many we can get her knocking over. Come on, Nacho. So, there's one. They will raid people's dustbins for any scraps of food, any rubbish that they think might be edible. So we've got a nice big dustbin that we're going to get Nacho raiding for us now. We're going to throw some things inside. We're going to put down a little bit of a slant because she's not quite heavy enough to knock it over by herself. So I'm just going to give her a bit of a helping hand. Put it on a bit of a slant, just like that. And this is Nacho's last behaviour for today as well. So I'm going to give her a nice big jackpot of food to finish. I think she deserves a big round of applause when she goes back into her box for the last time as well. So we're going for one final time. Come on, Nacho. There we go. Come on, Nacho.
Awesome. So here we just saw a caracara by the name of Nacho figuring out how to get his snacks. He has been trained, so he knows that when he runs back into that box, the trainer will give him more food, which I know is hard even for like a domesticated pet to associate that going back into a cage, being rewarded. So it's very impressive to see from a bird of prey. All right, we have one last clip here. And that was a caracara by the name of Peebles solving dog puzzle toys, which was very impressive. So let's see. So what do we think? Do we think the Johnny Rooks are smart? In these videos, the Johnny Rooks were showing off some pretty advanced cognitive abilities that aren't found in many other raptors. So the question is, how did they get so smart? A lot of scientists think that because Johnny Rooks need a long time to mature, like we said, how they get that adult plumage around 5 years, it takes them about like those 5-6 years to mature. This means that they have a long childhood where they can gather skills and learn how to survive. They think there's a correlation between that long childhood and having like better cognitive abilities. Kind of like humans, we are technically adults around like 18 years old. So we have all of that time to learn these really specific skills, even like earning money or living in a house, making our own food. So yeah, in addition, the ability to learn from others, the Johnny Rooks use that social learning, which is really important for them to survive. So they're observing, copying what the other Johnny Rooks are doing, and that can help the young birds learn more quickly what to eat, how to find it, what they need to do to get that food. So it's kind of like playing copycat, but that might not seem very complicated to humans, but that behavior does require a lot of intelligence from these birds. All right. So how long have Johnny Rooks been here? So Johnny Rooks' closest relatives still live in South America along the Andes mountain range. Scientists think that Johnny Rooks were blown by westerly winds from South America onto those Falkland Islands during our last glacial period. So as the glaciers melted and sea levels around the Falklands rose, the Johnny Rooks got trapped on these islands. They don't know exactly when this event occurred, but scientists have found Johnny Rook bones in a West Point peat bog close to the Falkland Islands, which are over 5,000 years old. So scientists have also discovered bones there from an extinct Caracara species called the giant Johnny Rook. The bones of that specimen suggest that the giant Johnny Rook was even larger, like 30% larger than the Johnny Rooks that are still around today. So that's just a fun fact. By looking at that fossil record and other resources, we can tell that they have lived on the Falkland Islands for quite some time. Okay, so when did they meet humans? On almost every other continent, humans and animals have been interacting together for thousands of years, but there were no native or indigenous people in the Falklands, so Johnny Rooks encountered people for the first time only about 200 years ago. So one of the first recorded encounters with Johnny Rooks comes from the journal of Charles Bernard, who is a sealer from New England in the US. So in that journal, Bernard called Johnny Rooks flying monkeys, and he wrote that, "I have known these birds to fly away with caps, mittens, stockings, knives, steel, tin pots, in fact, everything which their great strength is equal to." So Bernard was very intrigued by these birds. The Johnny Rooks are probably just as curious about seeing a human. Because of their unique situation, Bernard was able to witness a process that's very rare, seeing the Johnny Rooks trying to figure out what a human is. I'm sure they were extremely curious. Today, as many people might experience, Johnny Rooks are still trying to kind of figure out humans and get used to us. And they were curious long before. So, very good. Let's see. So claim to fame. Bernard was not the only one to record his interactions with Johnny Rooks. The prominent naturalist Charles Darwin also studied Johnny Rooks during his expedition through South America. In fact, his famous book, Voyage of the Beagle, Darwin wrote more about Johnny Rooks than he did about the popular Galapagos finches. Darwin described Johnny Rooks as tame and mischievous, quarrelsome and passionate, and wondered why they'd made the Falklands their metropolis. So what challenges have they faced? While Bernard and Darwin were fascinated by Johnny Rooks, many people have not felt the same way over the years. In 1908, the Falkland government put a bounty on Johnny Rookbeak, similar to the bounty on birds that were like birds of prey in the United States at the same time. So people felt that they were in competition with these birds of prey for food resources. And as a result, people tried to get rid of the Johnny Rooks, and they perceived these birds as pests. So they would shoot them and receive money for it. As a result of the bounty and these negative perceptions of the Johnny Rooks, the Johnny Rook population decreased dramatically in the 1900s. But people began to realize that, and in order to have this healthy functioning ecosystem, they wanted to protect all parts of the food web. So the Falklands government finally reversed this bounty and granted Johnny Rooks federal protection by 1999. So it took a bit of time, but it's really good. So having protection is very important. Today, the Johnny Rooks, however, are still facing a little bit of these challenges. So tiny populations such as the Johnny Rooks are often much more vulnerable to change than animals with larger populations. The Johnny Rooks birds really depend on seabird colonies, but climate change and habitat loss has been affecting that important food source for them. So if Johnny Rook's main food source, like the seabird colonies, were to leave for good, they might not be able to follow and be able to adapt or change fast enough to survive and keep up with such the limited population. So what do Johnny Rooks eat? Just like humans, Johnny Rooks need food to survive. So let's talk about what they're eating. First, we'll take a look at different diets animals can have. So some animals are specialists, meaning they only eat like a specific type of food, like the koala bear, for example, which they only primarily eat eucalyptus leaves. On the other hand, other animals are considered generalists, which means they'll eat pretty much whatever they can find in their habitat. So Johnny Rooks would fall into that generalist category. Johnny Rooks will eat whatever is available. The food resources that they have, they change throughout the year. So Johnny Rooks' foraging habits also change throughout the year. So let's see, we'll take a look at here. All right, so these are some things that they will eat throughout the year. So carrion that washes ashore, penguins killed by sea lions, drowned up livestock, sea lions, seal, penguin feces. They will even eat penguin poo. So they will find what they need to survive, and they make it work. They also will eat food that is left outside by humans, animal feed, pretty much anything. They are definitely generalists. All right. Sometimes even live animals. They will kind of look for vulnerable animals, disease, weakened, sick penguins, things like that, even eggs. And also a lot of invertebrates. So worms and insects are really important parts of the diet. Scientists have discovered a new strategy that helps Johnny Rook survive resource scarce winters. They find that when the birds that they usually look for food, even when that carrion is gone or when those birds migrate away, they have to find other food resources. So at first, scientists thought Johnny Rooks relied on human resources such as garbage and things like that, which they do sometimes, but they have been discovering that Johnny Rooks are even more interesting and resourceful than we realize. So during the winter season, Johnny Rooks will use the talons on their feet to till the earth and dig for invertebrates like earthworms. A flock of Johnny Rooks can till huge tracts of earth, as you can see on this picture on the right here. And let's see, in addition, Johnny Rooks scrounge through tidal pools and along the beach to take advantage of kelp fly larvae. These invertebrates are really important resources to help the Johnny Rook survive through that season where those seabird colonies aren't around. All right, why are Johnny Rooks important parts of the Falkland Islands ecosystem? So by eating carrion, Johnny Rooks provide important ecological services throughout the Falkland Islands, and ecological service involves a healthy functioning ecosystem that is a benefit for people. So for example, some plants filter the air, purify water, or like bees pollinating people's crops. Johnny Rooks and all scavengers provide a really important service by eating carrion and these dead materials. So by doing this, Johnny Rook help release nutrients stuck in those carcasses that can cycle back into the ecosystem and for other organisms to use. If Johnny Rooks weren't there to recycle those carrion nutrients, we would see a lot more dead animals lying around. In addition, Johnny Rooks prevent pest populations from taking advantage of that carrion that is found. If Johnny Rooks weren't there, pest populations like rats and earwigs would use that extra food and increase their population. So it's all about keeping a balance. Finally, Johnny Rooks help reduce the transmission of diseases. So if carcasses were never recycled by these scavengers, there would be harmful bacteria that could grow and pass on to other animals and humans. So Johnny Rooks have special adaptations that allow them to digest that harmful bacteria in the carrion and not get sick. Right, so here are just some questions I'd like to leave you guys with. Think about what fact you thought was most surprising, what you thought was the most interesting, why you think the Johnny Rooks are important, and if there's any information that you guys might want to take with you in the future. Nice little picture there on the end. And if you guys are interested in learning more, you can stay up to date with some exciting research, which is the Falkland Island Johnny Rooks Facebook page. It's at FI Johnny Rooks, you can see at the top. And I hope you guys have learned even more about Johnny Rooks and why they're so important, especially keeping a balanced ecosystem that's important all over the world, even here in Pennsylvania. So that's everything from me. I'm gonna pass it on to David. I have a couple questions before we pass it on to you. So just a couple questions, David. To start, what sparked your passion for biology and birds?
Well, I would say that growing up, I was always one of those kids that always wanted to be outside, turning over rocks, looking through leaf litter, just for anything that crawls or slithers. So I just carried that with me into college and into my professional career.
Nice, very good. How long have you been here at Hawk Mountain?
It'll be 21 years in November.
Awesome, congratulations.
Thank you.
So how did you get involved with studying the caracaras?
So the Hawk Mountain started working in the Falkland Islands back in, I think, 2003, when we were looking at a project on the interactions between humans and turkey vultures. So there's been a lot of conflict, similar to Johnny Rooks and humans. So when that project ended, we were interested in continuing the interactions between humans and Johnny Rooks, and to see what the long persecution of Johnny Rooks has had, what kind of effect that has had on the population.
Cool. All right, so I'll pass it off to you to tell us more about your research project, and if there's anything you wanted to add on from earlier. So you're welcome to share your screen and we will get started with this part of the program.
Oops. So thanks very much, everybody, for joining us. I just want to talk a little bit about a very small part of the project that we've been working on here at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. And As you saw from Riley's presentation, in the Falkland Islands, caracaras are really distributed only on those kind of far outer islands. And while they were on East and West Falkland Islands originally, they've really been pushed to these outer islands. One reason is persecution, but another reason is the large colonies of seabirds that are found on these outer islands. So a Johnny Rook or caracara really lives in and evolved in an ecosystem where food resources are really boom or bust. In the summertime around these colonies, like these thousands of Gentoo penguin colonies or penguins, there's a tremendous amount of food available. These are rockhopper penguins, again, colonies of seabirds, black-browed albatrosses, and their chicks. So the Johnny Rooks take advantage of dead and dying young or regurgitations from these seabirds or even the eggs. And so a tremendous amount of food available. These are imperial cormorants, and you can see these are all cormorants on their nest, and here's a Johnny Rook here. There's a Johnny Rook up here and another one up here. So they take advantage of the food resources by concentrating around these seabird colonies. The issue is that most of these seabirds leave the island after the breeding season. So in wintertime, there's really kind of a bust of food. There's not a lot of food available. And Riley talked a little bit about what we've discovered about the amount of invertebrates that these birds are eating in the wintertime. So we were interested in figuring out what they're eating and how they're actually surviving. Because if you have a endangered species or threatened species like the caracaras, whose population is at most maybe 4,000 birds, we wanted to discover what is the limiting factor? Why is their population so low? So we went to Saunders Island in the Falklands, which is the 4th largest island, and it's an actual operating sheep farm. It's owned by the Pole Evans family, and it has a large population of caracaras, both in the summer and in the winter. And interestingly, the population actually increases in the winter. But we were really concerned about or interested in what are these birds eating. So this is where the Pole Evans family lives, in a small settlement on the island. And it's these areas that we see a tremendous amount of caracaras moving into in the wintertime. So you saw a similar picture in the presentation, but these are the pigs that the Pole Evans family raises, and they feed the pigs every evening. And this is a congregation of caracaras that know about 4 o'clock, the pigs are gonna get fed, and they come in and try and steal the scraps from these pigs. So again, what are these caracaras eating? And there's several ways we could investigate this. We could just follow the Johnny Rooks around and notice their behaviors, figure out what they're eating, like this dead Magellanic penguin, or we can see them scraping around in the kelp racks, but we can't actually determine for these birds in the kelp racks exactly what they're eating. So luckily, there is a very convenient way we can kind of figure it out. Raptors in general aren't able to digest feathers and bones, so they cough up these pellets, and we can take the pellets, separate out all the different materials and figure out exactly what these birds are eating. So Johnny Rooks typically in the evenings will roost together. So this is a roost on Saunders Island, and the birds will nest up in this little patches of tussock grass or roost up in these tussock grasses, and after they digest, they will cough up the pellets and will end up down here on the rocks. So all we really need to do is head out there before the tide rises and collect pellets. So that's exactly what we did. We collected them, brought them inside, dried them, and then tried to figure out exactly what these birds are eating. So what we found is, and you'll notice that these percentages don't add up to 100%. These are just the percent of the pellets that contain different kinds of materials. So here we have 92% were birds, mostly upland geese. And I will say that these birds, the Pole Evans feed upland geese to their pigs. So that's probably why there was a large percentage of upland geese. in the pellets, but there was also other birds, penguins as well, in these. So 40% of the pellets had mollusks, 49% had weevils and ground beetles, 34% contained sheep or other livestock. The pole lemons would butcher their livestock occasionally, and so they could get pieces of fur and that way, or occasionally they would have one die out in the field, and the Johnny Rooks would take advantage of that food resource as well. And they also contained a lot of sand, probably just from digging in the sandy soils, looking for grubs and earthworms, etc. So that's what they eat in the winter time. You can see about 30% contained livestock. And Johnny Rooks have long been persecuted because of the interactions with sheep farmers and the sheep farmers' opinion that the Johnny Rooks were really harming or eating the livestock, especially the lambs. So how does their diet differ in the summertime? Well, if you look up here, 97%, almost all of the pellets contain some sort of penguin feathers. So they're relying on those large seabird colonies as a major food source during the summer times. They're also, these are kelp fly larvae, so they're also eating a lot of kelp fly larvae in these kelp racks that wash up along the shore. 60% contain krill. And no, they're not actually going out and catching krill, but these are really regurgitations from the penguin colonies. 74% contain grasses, and this is probably just a byproduct of foraging in the grass, looking for grubs. And surprisingly, 8% of the pellets contain plastic. And I do want to point out, this is not a picture from Saunders Island. It doesn't look this bad. This is just a picture of plastic on a beach off the internet. But there is a lot of, one of the main industries in the Falkland Islands is fishing. And we do see a lot of plastics washing up on the shore from those fishing boats. So, but the really important take-home message here, and what we discovered about diet in Caracaras, is even though this is a working sheep farm, there are hundreds of sheep around these seabird colonies in the summertime, none of the pellets that we found contained any evidence of Johnny Rooks or caracaras feeding on livestock. So that was very encouraging. And we're slowly trying to change the opinions of the sheep farmers. Working on Saunders Island, when we first started working there, the owners were very suspicious of Johnny Rooks. They didn't care for them. And now, almost 10 years later, they really have come to enjoy them and view them as their own. So with that, I will stop sharing. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good. All right, so I have one question here. Everyone feel free to add to the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform as we answer this, but the first question that I have here is, are the caracaras related to the squaws? They said that they're not sure. Yeah.
Skuas. No, they're not related. A skua is a seabird. They're both predatory, and caracaras are falcons, birds of prey. So they're both scavengers, but they are not related. So they kind of they fill the same niche and eat the same things, but they are not related.
Gotcha. I had a question. I was curious if in your time doing the research there, if you had any like interesting up close encounters with the caracaras while you were there.
Yeah, the caracaras are what we like to call pathologically curious. I mean, they are, I've had instances where I've just been sitting watching some waterfowl at a pond, and all of a sudden, and there's no caracaras around, and all of a sudden one will land behind you just because they see you out there and they're curious what you're doing. Another time I was walking down the road and caracaras were following me, and I noticed all of a sudden that they weren't there anymore. And I looked back and realized that I had lost one of my gloves and it dropped in the road. And of course, the caracaras were right on it, and they picked it up and flew away with it. So I calmly walked up to them, and you can get very close to them, and picked up a stick, waved it, and threw it, and they let the glove go and went and investigated what I threw. So,
Wow.
so yeah, they're
Nice guy.
fascinating birds.
Very cool. All right, we have one more question. If control of the islands passes to Argentina, would that protected status of the caracaras change?
That's a great question. I don't know for sure. They are certainly, I mean, they were protected through the Falkland Island colonies. I honestly don't know. But I would imagine that part of the Falkland Islands, one of their major industries is tourism. And so I would have a feeling that Argentina would probably protect them just because that's a huge industry that they would be losing if they lost caracaras or they lost any of the seabird colonies. So I have a feeling they probably would be protected eventually.
Right. Okay, well, very good. Thank you guys for the great questions. I think that's all we have for questions for today. So thank you so much, David, for joining us today for this
You're
awesome
welcome.
presentation. For everyone watching, David will actually be doing another webinar program with us featuring the Caracara research. And that's going to be on Thursday, August 27th at 4 p.m. So don't miss it. This was kind of just like a preview. I have a couple upcoming virtual programs too, I just wanted to mention. Friday, July 31st, we have a Guardians of the Indian Grasslands, which are raptors with Devon Mehta. And on Wednesday, August 5th, we have invasive insects and bad biters with Kyle Schutt of the Schuylkill County Conservation District, and that's at 1 p.m. And lastly, we have on Friday, August 7th, basic birding skills with Holly Merker at 4 p.m. So yes, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we will see you for the next live program.
Thanks very much.